With the release of Limbus company's brand new Intervallo came two new Ring identities, following the recent release of the Ring Corporists to expand the Ring faction up to 6 units. The identities in question are the Ring Fauvist Docent Rodion and the Ring Fauvist student Meursault, two bleed-sinking hybrids that specialize in debuff infliction and rely on those debuffs heavily for damage. The new duo is supposed to mesh well with the other rings, while also replacing their Bloodfiend counterparts in Princess and Prince. But are they strong enough to do that? In this video, I aim to dive deep into the power of the new units in order to answer that question. First looking at their kits, and then checking out their performances and comparing them to the identities of old. But before we do that, I have to remind you that most of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you find yourself coming back to my videos or end up enjoying this one, consider subscribing. It takes a second and helps me out a lot. Now let's look at the Fauvists. We'll start with Rodion and her kit. Ring Rodion has OK health, high speed and a base defense level. Her sin affinity spread consists of Gloom, Envy and Lust, with a Lust defense. All of Rodion's skills get stronger with debuffs on the enemy, Palette Vibrant and Bleed and Sinking. Her skill 1 is Vehement Overpainting. This skill has 1 coin and clashes up to 15, and its coin is reused once if the enemy has 4 or more debuffs, while inflicting 1 bleed count, 1 sinking and 1 mold color rouge. Her skill 2 is Expression of Primary Colors. This skill rolls up to 24 and its coins inflict 2 bleed, 2 sinking count, 1 mold color red, 1 mold color blue, and if the enemy has 5 or more debuffs, also 1 Touchard. Rodion's skill 3 comes in 2 forms. The base skill 3 rolls up to 24 and inflicts 2 bleed, 4 bleed count, 2 sinking, 2 red, 3 blue and 1 Touchard, with 1 more next turn if the enemy has 5 or more negative effects. The old skill gets used at 6 or more negative effects and rolls up to 25, while inflicting a bit more of the same effects and dealing more damage. It also has 3 weight with unfocused volley, but the last coin hits all targets. Rodia's clashable counter also has 2 forms. The base form has 2 coins, rolls up to 15 and inflicts some bleed, sinking and colors. The old defense is Critique. It's used if the enemy has 3+ debuffs and Rodia doesn't have Reflexion. It clashes at up to 20 and has 1 coin that gets reused based on enemy debuffs, inflicting bleed and sinking with each hit, as well as a random color. The third coin inflicts Touchard on top of that. At skill end, Rodion gains 2 Reflexion. As for her passives, Ring Rodia has 3. The first one gives her L'Hommage, equal to the number of students on the field at turn start, once per encounter. It also makes Rodia apply defense or offense level up randomly to Ring student allies based on their amount, also once per encounter. Her second passive inflicts 1 palette on enemies that have red, blue and Touchard at the same time. If the enemy has enough red and blue, they get more stacks of palette based on those effects. At turn end, Rodion puts on her mask if she inflicted palette 3 times, used Critique twice, or used her skill 3 too. Her third passive requires 2 Lust Resonance, and it makes Rodion inflict 1 more of red, blue and Touchard. As for Rodion's support passive, it needs 3 Lust Resonance, and it makes the first deployed ally inflict 1 more bleed or sinking based on the number of Lust skills chosen. It also gives 1 offense or defense level up to the ally if they're from the ring. That's it for Rodion, and Meursault is up next. And honestly, I'll be super brief with him. Meursault has low HP, same speed and a -1 defense level. His sins are Wrath, Pride and Lust, with a Lust defense. The central part of Meursault's kit is his first passive. It makes him inflict 1 red on hit, and after inflicting 10 red in total, Meursault puts on the mask. Also, he gets a buff when Rodion uses critique. With the mask on, Meursault inflicts more red, and he heals SP when inflicting red, getting blunt damage up instead if he's at full SP. As for his skills, they also scale their damage with debuffs on the enemy, but not as hard as Rodion. Other than that, Meursault's skills 1 and 2 are pretty generic. Meursault's skill 3 turns into a 4-coin skill when used against an enemy with 5 color stacks or when Meursault is under half HP. That last coin also inflicts either bleed or sinking on hit, chosen randomly. Outside of that, this skill 3 is similar to that of Rodion, but it lacks blue and touche RD. The defensive skill for Meursault is a super basic clashable counter. With the kids out of the way, let's look at the unique effects of the Fauvists. Mold color Rouge, or just red, stacks up to 9 and makes the enemy get 1 bleed for every 3 stacks of the effect when hit for the first time in a turn. And, at turn end, the effect inflicts 1 defense level down on the enemy for every 4 stacks of red, and 1 stack is lost. Mold color Blue, or just blue, is the sinking version of red, which has the secondary effect of making the enemy lose 5 SP if the stack is at 5 or higher. Touche RD stacks up to 2 and makes the enemy take 10% more HP and SP damage from bleed and sinking per stack, with 1 stack being lost at turn end. L'Hommage stacks to 3 and randomly gives 1 offense or defense level up for each stack, before expiring at turn end. Reflexion stacks to 2, prevents Rodion from using critique, heals 5 SP at turn start and loses 1 stack at turn end. When it expires, Rodion gets L'Hommage based on students on the field. Le Fauvisme Masque de Loup gives 1 speed, increases base skill bleed and sinking potency infliction by 1, and, on hit, if the target has 3 or more blue, Rodion inflicts 1 sinking count, doing the same with red and bleed count. Le Fauvisme Masque de Chien makes Meursault deal 5% more damage for every 3 mold color on the target, increases his potency infliction by 1 and makes Meursault inflict 2 bleed count before hitting an enemy without bleed. Imperfections at Rest is an effect that increases Meursault's damage by 10%, recovers his SP when Rodion reuses the coin of critique, and expires when Rodion runs out of Reflexion. Wow, that's a lot of effects. But we're finally done here, and that means we can move on to the performance of the 2 units in combat. We'll jump straight into the Bleed team, as that's the ring's field of expertise. Within the Bleed team, the brand new duo of Ring Rodion and Ring Meursault have to face direct competition in Princess Rodion and Prince Meursault. So what do the new rings do well? And just how well do they do it? We'll begin with Meursault, as he's very simple. The key to Meursault's role lies in his first passive. When hitting an enemy, Meursault inflicts red. That's all it is. With this passive, Meursault becomes a great consistent source of red infliction, and as the stack of the effect maxes out at 9, Meursault's presence on the field allows you to get to that cap much faster than with Rodion alone, and is especially crucial for reapplying red after phase transitions or wave changes. And this is where we run into the first issue the Fauvists face. Red, as an effect, is quite underpowered. 1 to 3 bleed once per turn, and you don't even get to that 3 instantly. This isn't nothing, but it's also very far from being a notable effect that you would need a dedicated stacker for. And well, this is a reminder that kit previews just won't ever show you the full picture. Without clear values and limits released, the effect had many people, myself included, hyped for the Fauvist's bleed infliction, and when it dropped, we got this. Well, no matter. Where gimmicks fail, the baseline stats can still save the day. And speaking of those, Meursault's stats are fine. His damage is nothing to write home about, and it's pretty similar to Prince. Although Meursault gets to use a heavier skill 3 against one target, while Prince's skill 3 too can hit 3 targets at once. In terms of bleed infliction, both Meursaults have almost the same numbers on their skills, with their skills 1 and 2 being equal, while Prince wins by 1 potency on his skill 3. Of course, with Red in mind, Ring is ahead in potency still, and that gap grows larger once he gets his mask, although that part of his kit is only relevant on a handful of encounters. Prince, on the other hand, has his utility value on top of his baseline. Last Fragility, La Mancha Parade, Focused Performance, all effects that increase the damage of his team. They mostly benefit Bloodfiends though, and the number of those in the Bleed team is rapidly decreasing. But it's not particularly difficult to slot in Prince alongside Manager Dawn, the identity that benefits from said unique buffs the most. Additionally, Prince has better sins for fueling Yearning Merkala and Sanguine Desire, so the envy in his kit is another point in his favor. Overall, Meursault is not a particularly bad unit, especially considering that he's free, but he does not exactly provide a large edge over Prince, like, ever, and loses out pretty handily when it comes to AoE content, as Prince has attack weight, while Ring struggles to keep up conditionals. There is some extra value in him being a Ring identity in the first place, but we'll get to that later. Rodion's portfolio is much more diverse than Meursault's, and her rival matchup is a lot easier. Ring Rodion, much like Meursault, has access to Red, but her kit does not stop there, and in fact, Rodia has access to 4 unique debuffs in her kit, making her a great source of miscellaneous effects for Ring identities. Among these debuffs, one really stands out: Touche RD. This effect grants a 1.2 times multiplier to bleed damage against an enemy. This effectively works like extra bleed potency, and allows you to deal more than 99 bleed damage per coin. Touche RD is extremely potent as a source of bonus true damage, and Rodion can access it through her skills 2 and 3. Also remember to get at least a double Last Resonance on turns when Rodion is set to inflict the effect, as most of her Touche RD inflictions only give 1 stack, so you need Rodion's passive online to get to the second. This effect alone is already a pretty strong tool for boss encounters, but Ring Rodion has a couple more claims to fame. Her physical damage has a pretty decent upper bound, with a 200 damage skill 3-2 and a critique that nears 100 damage with both reuses. This isn't anything groundbreaking, but it's some honest damage output. Rodion's bleed infliction is not very impressive though, which leaves her reliant on Touche RD to meaningfully impact the stack. That being said, unlike Meursault, Rodia isn't exactly forced to showcase great stats all around, as her competition is Princess Rodion, an identity that I would consider the weakest link in the Bleed team before the release of this banner. Princess mostly stuck around because Sanguine Desire is a powerful tool that allows you to forgo focusing on count during team building and opens up the way for stronger Bleed teams to shine. And the new Rodion is, well, still a Rodion, so she retains access to the ego, and as an identity, Princess brings very little to the table. Her damage hasn't been impressive for a year at this point. Her bleed infliction scales with Blooming Thorn, but does so very slowly, and her skill 3-2 is real AoE, as opposed to Ring Rodia's fake AoE, but it's still nothing particularly impressive. Much like Prince though, Princess has a slightly better sin spread for ego fueling, with her Pride skill 1 contributing towards the fueling of both Sanguine Desire and Yearning Meursault. Overall though, I have no qualms with putting Princess to rest. The new Rodion identity wipes the floor with the old one in terms of solo boss performance, as she doesn't just press Sanguine Desire, but instead also gets access to Touche RD and a couple pretty strong last skills. In the Refraction Railway though, I have to say that Rodion is a bit of a fraud. Her reliance on debuffs for damage conditionals greatly inhibits her ability to face back-to-back bosses, as on the first turn of each wave, Rodion is left without a large portion of her damage, even if the enemy has bleed. This isn't helped by her getting +1 speed in her base kit as well as +1 speed from Rin Honglu, as those buffs bring Rodion up to a speed roll of 6 to 9, basically forcing her to go before her Kurokumo allies, which could provide same turn debuffs for conditionals if Rodion was slower. Does this mean that she's bad in Refraction Railway? Well, actually yeah. Line 5 doesn't really need Sanguine Desire to be used anyways, so Rodion can be safely dropped, which you would already do to Princess. The new Rodion doesn't mesh well with the Railway format, so she can sit on the bench as well. In terms of team building, the Kurokumo duo stays untouched for yet another patch, while the new Rodion can get a spot on any kind of boss killing composition. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Meursault, so I don't believe he's a priority anywhere exactly, but much like with Rodion, you can slot him in on bosses to take advantage of a bit of extra bleed and a slightly harder hitting skill 3. In stuff like Refraction Railway and general AoE content though, it's better to stick to Prince, and if you really need a Rodion on the field, I'd go with Rin over Princess. In the context of the bleed composition, the new identities aren't that much stronger than the Bloodfiends. Rodion definitely murders Princess on bosses, but when it comes to the Railway, they're surprisingly close in power, or rather their lack of power. Meursault could potentially be taken over Prince on bosses, but is worse than him in the Railway. Overall, the Fauvists aren't a brand new breakthrough like the Corporists are, but, to be honest, bleed doesn't exactly need a big powerful push, it's already strong, so I'm not mad about it. Now, sinking. Yeah, no. Rodion will never see the light of day in the sinking team for as long as Night of Despair roams the earth, and Meursault is barely a sinking identity at all. There is no chance for the new rings to make a name for themselves in that composition. Now, why did Kim Jae-hoon decide to follow up the greatest sinking identity with 2 more sinking Rodions back to back? I have no fucking clue. But hey, at least it makes my job as a reviewer that much easier. With this, we're done with Rin Fauvist Docent Rodion and Student Meursault. They're decent bleed identities, and Rodion actually brings an interesting effect to the table for boss encounters, while Meursault is mainly just a red merchant. They're not as strong as the Corporists, but Rodion does show some promise for any kind of upcoming damage sponge boss, as a bleed multiplier is a pretty juicy concept. Should you get them? Well, Meursault is literally free, so might as well. And Rodion definitely is worth picking up and using, so yeah. If you disagree with me or have something to add, feel free to leave a comment below, and I might read it and respond. If you liked the video at any point, leave a like to let me know, and if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye. Le Fauvisme masque... Fuck. Le Fauvisme masque de chien makes Meursault... Le Fauvisme, masque de chien. Fucking hell.
Fauvisme, masque de chien. Le fauvisme, masque de chien.